One important thing I wanted to go over was how to use a voltmeter just for some basic voltage checks. Alright, you have the red positive, black negative, and we're going to want, on your voltmeter, might look a little bit different, but these symbols are going to be very similar. We're going to want a direct current, which is the V with the line that's straight. The squiggly line is alternating current. So you're just going to want to switch your voltmeter to go to direct current. Now you can do real basic checks. You can just put the negative cable onto any chassis ground. You know, if you have a ground terminal, it works great. What I'm going to do to make it a little bit easier, I'm going to use a jumper lead, attach it, one to the negative cable for the voltmeter, and the other one right to a chassis ground, so that I can continue taping with one hand. Alright, here's our jump terminal. So if we wanted to check to see what our voltage value was of our battery, in case we're having some kind of an issue, or if we want to check some basic alternator output, just touch it to the positive. Our other one's already on the ground, and we have 12.16 volts, which is a good reading for the battery. Now the next step that we can do is actually run the vehicle with the loads off and then see what kind of voltage we have. Alright, gonna start the vehicle. We could do this just for a basic alternator check. And our time and date has reset. That could be for a few things. Our voltage was low. There's something going on with the vehicle that could be shutting down the 30G relay. When that happens, you can actually lose your time and date. It could be something as simple as a weak battery, but then it also could be something called a parasitic draw that would be draining your battery voltage down. There's also another issue called wakings, and you could have a module that continues to send a electronic pulse which is going to wake up the vehicle. BMWs go through a sleep cycle. Most BMWs takes about an hour for them to complete that sleep cycle. The newer ones are a little bit faster. I think it's about a half hour. But during that time, if a control module has an issue, it can actually wake up the other control modules, and you can end up with a pretty high amperage draw, and that would drain your battery down. So we're going to switch over and look at alternator output. Remember, we had about 12 volts before. Now we're getting 14.3. And this is actually a nice reading. We want to see about 14.5 volts, 14.5. You can monitor battery voltage. I've actually seen alternators cause too much voltage when they're actually failing. They can actually switch between too little and too much. I've seen upwards of 18 volt spikes. When that happens, the vehicle electronics can start to shut down. The transmission control usually goes into fail-safe mode, and I've seen the instrument cluster jumping all over the place. Makes for an interesting ride when this is occurring. I think I've seen it mostly on E66 and E65 7 Series vehicles. I've had quite a few of those alternators actually cause an overcharging issue. Many times the fault code will actually store in the transmission control module with the voltage reading, and you can actually see 16 to 18 volts stored with that fault code. And that's a great indicator that your alternator needs to be replaced. Alright, so if I suspected that my alternator was a problem, the next thing I would do is go ahead and turn on my engine loads, or electrical loads. Turn the radio on, we'll turn the blower on max, you can turn the wipers on if you wanted, but this should be good. And then we'll check the alternator output with all of those electrical loads. As you can see, 14, 3.6, 3.9, actually that's holding really well. So we don't have any issue here. If you actually had an alternator that was causing an issue, you'd actually see that drop down to maybe 12 volts or maybe even less. It might even go down to 11, 10 volts. And at that point, there's going to be some issues with the coils and the spark plugs not being able to fire correctly, and that could cause some misfiring. So this is just some basic electrical checks, voltage checks that you can do. You can do this checking fuses as well. Just need a